I'm Dr. Olena Berezovska, and I'm welcoming everyone to this podcast with another unique person from United States, which I met through International Positive Psychology Association. And it's another psychologist, but in educational psychology. And I was very surprised because if you look at the tree of psychologists as branches, how it went, so you have so many different psychologists. And educational psychology is something new for me because it's about students, studies, etc. So related to our education. So I have Wendy Biddle from, as I said, from United States, Georgia, right? She's a certified health and wellness coach, instructor for student support courses, and coach at the University of Georgia. Welcome, Wendy. I'm happy to
Thank you so much, Olena. It is such a pleasure to meet with you. And thank you again for initiating this podcast, because it's been fascinating to see all of the different ways that people are applying positive psychology. And so a little bit more about what I do. For the last 25 years, I've worked in higher education, essentially colleges and universities, with young adults, primarily. Traditional students is the term that we use, who are 18 to 22, and graduate students. Of course, that's everyone else. And then non-traditional students are undergraduates who are not 18 to 22. And my area of specialization since 2018 has really been positive psychology and its application in the experience for undergraduates. And because perhaps I'm an American, and we like short-term results, I formulated a course that tracks the student efforts to apply the positive psychology interventions that they choose themselves from the research validated techniques that have been proven to make people happier. Shout out to Dr. Lubomirsky and Rick Hansen, because those are the primary texts that we use. We also use the Greater Good website out of Berkeley. And the students choose what they want to do, and then using Dr. Lubomirsky's validated assessment tool, track their happiness over the course of the semester. And again, short-term results. I feel like 15 weeks is long enough for them to see if it's going to take. And we help support one another in this cohort, when things go crazy, because that's life.
Yeah. Would you agree that like modern students are more lucky than we were because they have such a support, especially psychological support, and even different approach, different attention, everything different, comparing like as I remember, for example, my education at university, we didn't have so much support from even the teachers, from lecturers.
Oh, right.
And now you brought a positive psychology and educational psychology in one place, and I'm sure like it's expanding, and it's amazing that now we're talking about educational psychology, which is like really new part of life. And I'm very happy that we have this subject, and really happy. But also, we like the students not just lucky that they have, but I remember when Dr. Salomon was telling about his first steps in positive psychology. He actually mentions that he worked a lot with students, like a lot of experiments, like psychological experiments were done on students. It doesn't mean they were like guinea pigs, but I mean, they were just like answering the question. They were building all these profiles of the profiles of positive psychology through students' life and their satisfaction, the happiness and happiness. And I think that's why we have a huge experience, because a lot of studies were built on the life and feelings of students.
It's very serendipitous. Some people would say providential, depending on your epistemological underpinning, how you see the world. But for me, it is very providential and serendipitous, perhaps, because you're exactly right, that we have this resource through Dr. Sullivan's Institute and others in the last 20 years, and the way that I like to frame it with the students is they're the generation,
Yeah.
that you didn't know this when you were busy learning how to eat and
Yeah, we paid.
gestating, but this was
I,
getting cooked up for not just for you, but it took that long for us to, as a field, focus on this
yeah,
and
be
to dial it back
separated
even
in
more.
some way. Like, I mean, not truly separated, but create a new branch of psychology. And
That's
it's,
right.
I really kind of, so we have experience, we have years of knowledge and everything, but only now we concentrate in a more specific, like direction, like educational psychology. So you're working with a very, well, I cannot say unique because we're all unique in any age, we're unique, but I mean, very specific group of
Right.
population, young generation. And I know it's like still maturing
Yes, it's exciting.
adult, still mature, not adolescent. They would never call themselves teens, even if they're 18.
I have to stop myself all the time to not call them kids.
Yeah, but at
Yeah,
the same time, like they want us to call them adults, but they still learning, they still growing, they
that's right.
getting education, profession, and etc. And how much different, like what kind of differences you see working with this group of adults, young adults, comparing to other adults? Because I know you have experience not just like in
Hmm.
students' life, right? But also going through your experience, so you can compare. What is the difference? The like what actually you took from the psychology and positive psychology into educational psychology, knowing this difference.
Well, I'll try to distill it down to three things for the sake of time, but there's a lot. I mean, it's very exciting to learn how this intersects with these real people who are in this stage of life, in this time in the world, because there's so much going on and they're
Yeah.
very sensitive. And they're called Generation Z, the best educated generation ever. So that brings me to the first of the 3 points that I'll bring out. One, they require the evidence to a larger degree than I think we did.
Yeah.
Many of us. And many of them have been schooled specifically in critical thinking,
Yeah.
which is great. And so they are very open to what is being done. And like all humans, they are seeking the best life, but they want to know why it is called the best. And then they're going to run it through the filter of their own experience. And I don't know if that is something that has become more an area where we're all more sensitive after COVID and that deep reflection, but it needs to be real and authentic.
Yeah, it's right.
And their relationship to authority is very different than some previous generations. They're certainly not going to believe it just because I said so.
I agree with you about this because I remember in medicine we had, for example, the name of professor or name of some kind of academical guru, and we call it school of this, like John Smith, school of that. And if he says so, that it's like a dogma, even if its dogma is wrong. And it was for years, for decades, until the younger generation start searching and analyzing, using specific statistic analysis, right? And using the programs, computer programs to analyze. And then it said, no, this is school like they're wrong. So now we don't actually look at the school of something or whatever. We try to have, like you said, opinion, even us older generation.
That's right.
We stop trusting only one opinion, one dogma, and we searching for something that we approve or we disapprove. And young generation, I think they have access to internet. They grew up on internet. They know how to search, and I think that's why their approach to know if it's true or not true, if it's valid, not valid, etc., right? Absolutely different like ours, because
That's right.
They stop seeing leaders or let's say authority in like scientists, in doctors, in everyone, because they have more freedom to choose,
That's
which we
right.
didn't have, which we didn't have. And from my point of view, to teach these students, it's look like easier, but at the same time, you have to be some kind of leader they can trust. Another way, they start searching for something, and then you lose them as a team, and you will not be able to pass the knowledge if they don't trust you. So I think to be teacher lecturer more difficult at this time, because they check everywhere online. They check any publication.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And for my 18 to 22-year-old niche, keeping in mind they came of age around the time fake news became a real buzz phrase. And so they are a critical group. Having said that, this has been, this will bring me to the second point that I'll bring out about what makes them different. That according to the American Psychological Association, and this is no news to, I think, most people with even a smidgen of interest in psychology or who have their eyes open, we're in the midst of a mental health crisis. There's a lot of trauma floating around out here, and not a great deal of information that's been internalized and applied in people's own lives to create healthier lives. Now, within that context, the subniche, Generation Z, the APA came out in November, I believe. I'd have to check the facts, but I believe it was November of 2020. In the midst of the election, after the social unrest in the United States, we had protests. That was hot that summer of 2020. And of course, there was the pandemic. And I loved and also was terrified by the APA's adoption of the phrase, the perfect storm of stress. And they did a pulse survey with their group to find out how people were doing. And they found that, yes, indeed, people are very stressed out. The numbers were high. I want to say 9 out of 10, 8 or 9 out of 10 were experiencing extreme stress. And it didn't matter which side of the political spectrum a person was on. They were afraid of the others. Within that context, Generation Z was feeling the most stress for various reasons. And so they need this in a way that when I was going through college and just doing my thing in 1993 to 1998, finishing my first grad degree, I was a lot of things, and I had normal stresses, relationships, school. I lived a fairy life compared to what the people that I'm working with now, who come from similar backgrounds, superficially, that I did at the time, but the stressors are very different. And so they are looking for something that really works. This is not an intellectual pursuit. So that they can study for a test.
I remember when I was graduating the university, I already had 2 little kids. Like my second, like my son, my second child was born right after exams, like final exams. So I was lucky to pass exam and then deliver. But
that, to understate that, and you'll know what I'm talking about. Man, that's beyond admirable.
So I had 3 pregnancies because in my country, actually in Europe, women were married quite early. So for me, like I married at 21. For me, it was normal. I would say like perfectly normal marriage. And then I married to have family, and I continued to study. So they called me a chronic pregnant woman because I had 3 pregnancies, and one of them was very bad. The first one, then 2 seconds were okay, but still I graduated with excellent marks, and even like with recognition that I got a very high recognition for my achievements. But so if it doesn't matter if you're mother of 2 or 3, if you want to learn something, you study, do it, like you have to do. But what I want to say, I remember like my biggest concern was to find at least one job somewhere and stay in this job ever forever, because this was our mentality. You have to stay in one, office or hospital, like
That's
because
right.
it was right. And for me, it was a pleasure, like a miracle to find a job. Now I see when I change this, like it doesn't matter. When I came to Canada, people can change up very easily, right? So that way they don't like, they leave.
That's right.
And now even more, because young generation wants to work from in comfortable environment from home, having everywhere like internet.
That's
And
right.
and that's why even the perception of jobs, the perception of the professions change, because many professions do not require like 24 hours in the office or whatever.
That's right.
You can do a lot of work from home, which make our lives more comfortable. And I think young generation, actually, they look more for comfort at home, but
Mhm.
it's the same, like comfort of work from home or whatever, but spend more time in comfortable
Mhm.
atmosphere. But another like big minus that growing, it's lack of socializing, true
I am
socializing.
so happy you mentioned that, because that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, because you see, like before, like you said, our generation, we had socializing a real one. So we
Right.
maybe had parties, we met often, like it doesn't matter, we socializing a lot. Like,
That's right.
and I don't deny the importance of internet and virtual reality, because now we can do the podcast here in the United States. I'm in Canada, right?
I
This is
absolutely love it. I love
I
it.
love it too. I love it too. And that's why I say like there's a lot of positives
That's
like
right.
sides of this. But at the same time, like I seen and I even read somewhere in the studies and paper that a young generation need socializing like normally.
Mm-hmm.
In other ways, they loosen a lot. They lose, I guess, adjustment and adaptation to environment. When the
Mm-hmm.
COVID happened, what happened? People who spend 2 3 years like in this quarantine and staying inside, locked, or mostly in prison, home prison,
Right.
they, they lost this feelings of socializing, like normal life outside. Even me, you wouldn't believe when my husband, we get used to go every week to some restaurant or travel somewhere to the country and
Mm-hmm.
have a beautiful time together. And we had this kind of all the time when the weather allowed. But when COVID like was over, I found myself that we hardly go outside to restaurant and we wanted to go. I remember these feelings. Oh, I want to leave this prison. I want to go somewhere. But actually, the quarantine was over, and they said now you can go even without mask. I don't know. I felt somehow in my husband like some kind of like not laziness, but I would say like something like you in a slow motion video, right?
Right.
Okay, you're ready to go, but you're psychological, not ready to just open doors of any cafe, any restaurant, socializing. And it took us time
It
to
did.
start loving this back. But for young generation, it's actually was even more difficult than for us. And back to studies, back to universities,
Yes.
and among my friends, I have friends who has the same age, like the young generation, sons
Mhm.
and daughters. Some of them couldn't continue and study at universities because they were like they felt lost or not needed or something else.
Right. Right. That's exactly right. It's an issue that we talk about in my field among my colleagues, and it's at our institution, but it's everywhere.
Yeah,
This
so
sense of connection.
I read in your mind.
Yeah, you are. You are. You've talked about loneliness, and you talked about this sense of connection. But I was just in a discussion yesterday with a wonderful colleague who is the vice president of student well-being. And
Uh-huh.
interestingly, a little bit of context with that, because going back to this idea of providential for some, serendipitous for others. In 2020, January of 2020, our institution, led by the president of the institution, released his strategic vision 2025. And within it, there was this emphasis on well-being that had never been there before.
Mm-hmm.
And so there, of course, with something like that, there was a budget that was unprecedented that was going to be concentrating on student well-being. I was so excited because I've been in the APA for a minute now, as the students, not kids, would say. And I'd been around long enough to know they really needed somebody to focus on them, because things were not going well. At our institution, like other institutions, the number one learning disability that has been diagnosed by our Disability Resource Center, trumping, if use that word without it being too triggering, ADHD and ADD, which had long been in the lead for inhibiting their ability to just be themselves in class.
Yeah,
And the numbers had not gone down on that, but generalized anxiety disorder took over by 2018.
I agree.
So I was thrilled to see this. And then COVID. And so all the better. Since then, this position, my colleague actually was put into this position since then because they created it for this focus. And we were talking about students' loneliness. And I have that conversation at least once a week with a colleague where, and we all agree, if we're older, I was a lot of things 18 to 22. Lonely was never it.
Yeah, everything is changing. I think we need to change even our view that nothing is stable. Nothing is stable. It means we get used to stable life. No, we of course we accept progress, we accept development, it's okay. But then suddenly we are restricted, like simple virus restricted us, entire society, entire population of the planet. And we are restricted. We are restricted by countries, by whatever, name it, in business, everywhere, which was really unexpected because we get used to have, like I would say, stable progress. I mean, stable but slow progress. And then it's boom. And now even with war in Ukraine, because I work a lot with Ukraine and Russia, and then suddenly for me, I realized like it's like completely now different life for me because I cannot do as much as I wanted. I cannot go to Ukraine and do lecturing and everything. Even I do online, but still it's not the same. I cannot see my relatives. I cannot do this. So it continues some restriction in my life.
Wow.
But it shows me like, how actually our life is unpredictable, like truly unpredictable. Even if we create some laws, some kind of like graphs, even we like have some prediction, but again, it comes unexpectedly. Sometimes this prediction, they don't work. And according to, and actually, I think the strengths to deal with this unpredictable changes, unpredictable restriction, it comes from our like use from when we as students, right? How we learn resilience, how we learn like, to be adjusted easily. And psychologically, I'm not talking about like other things, but psychologically adjusted to such rapid changes. Educational psychology works actually with this a lot because in this young generation you have such unstable like mood and wishes, and today they know who they're gonna be, tomorrow they change their minds, they lost, and etc.
Right.
And can you tell me more, like you do coaching, like about some kind of parts or ingredients of this coaching, like how you work individually or with group, like a little bit more, because I hardly know about educational psychology. I can feel what I need as a student, but, but I never even look into the books and publication about educational psychology because it's new, honestly speaking, like the part of psychology, but the same time, it's not my specialization, right? So
that's completely fair. It's completely fair. And I do not, although I am an educational psychologist, I call myself an applied educational psychologist. And I won't speak for all educational psychologists. So we are a very diverse and huge group. And loosely speaking, very broadly, and if I offend anyone who listens for being too reductionist, I am sorry. So, but very broadly, it's the psychology of learning. And since our roots are in traditional psychology, it is typically a quantitative field. And my own dissertation was not, it was qualitative, because part of what we are known for in the Southern United States, more so than some places, not so much perhaps as others, is we love stories, Olena.
Oh yeah.
We love people, and we love to sit and just talk. And so I don't have a day that goes by that I don't make an effort to go and sit on the front porch of my 85-year-old neighbor, who's my best friend in the neighborhood, right? And I wanted to hear people's stories. And so when I first started, I was studying issues that centered around diversity and creating a system, perhaps, but certainly equalizing advantages to access education and whatever it took to realize one's potential, no matter one's background. Because I was raised by a mother who really emphasized, as I was growing up, the stories of immigrants and people who had lost everything and had the strength to pull it together and start all over. And I was inspired by that from a young age. And so when I went to graduate school, I said, I want those people now to have the kinds of advantages that my family provided for me growing up. Because I knew they were just as intelligent, they were more resourceful than some of us who had not faced those challenges. They had the creativity, and they were part of the fabric of our culture. And my mom was a history teacher, so I was raised on what it meant to be American and the American dream, and that was it. And so that's where I began. And so I started collecting stories of the people who had done well to be able to share that with the people who were still working to do well. And then over time, because that was 10 years ago that I got out of graduate school, I learned about positive psychology. And then it made so much sense to transition. And I was captivated, and I really have been passionately pursuing it ever since.
Wonderful. Yeah. And I appreciate that you mentioned that educational psychology is about learning, because we were talking mostly about psychological condition of students,
Right.
but we didn't mention that they came to university or colleges to study, to learn. And the
That's right.
progress of learning depends on many factors, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's not just the comfort, it's a lot of other factors
That's
in
right.
the grounds, right? And I think that's why we have absolutely different approach even in educational psychology, working with students, working with the ability to learn, ability to use this knowledge, because you can learn, you can get knowledge, but you never use it practically because you don't know how to use it practically.
That's right. And what is the point of the knowledge if you're not learning to live your best life? And so what we do in coaching, to go back to your question, is share the research with them, share out the resources, somewhat allow them to develop their own curriculum, decide where they want to take it. In my generation in the United States, there was a series of books that was really popular for kids called Choose Your Own Adventure. That's what you do with coaching. Choose your own adventure. Here's your facts. Here's the data. Now let's establish 1 to 3 specific action steps, and then check back in with me. And over time, it usually takes, some people are one and done and they're pretty satisfied with it, but I work with some people for years, at least a semester most, and they learn how to do that themselves. That when they face a challenge, they go out, they find what they need, whether it's people, whether it's resources along these lines, and they tap into that and they focus on addressing the challenge.
Yeah, it's always a challenge. And I actually done a couple courses and lectures for young doctors, because many of them wants to be progressive, successful, achieve something, and they don't know where to start. They say, I don't know, I have nothing, like, I don't know, like, I said, okay, let's talk about your skills, for example, because you have some knowledge, you went through education, but the skills actually is the base of what you're doing. The knowledge, yeah, it's about one base, but then you have another one, like stronger one, your experience. And I said, you don't need to have all skills, but for example, you have better social skills, and that person has better writing skills, and another person has management skills much better. That's why
Mhm.
you have to learn what skills you have, what you've done,
That's
where you feel
right.
comfortable. And if you want to get more skills, then you had to learn how to get the skills, right?
That's right.
And that's why I said never copy anyone, because some people say, "Oh, I would like to be like you." You don't need to be like me. You need to be yourself, but in better
That's right.
version of yours. So you have to kind of see yourself. How would you
Mhm.
like to be? I can be a good sample for you, but something you never take from me, because I lived in under different circumstances and different environment. I had different dramas of life, not like yours. So,
Mhm.
that's why I usually teach people. I said, just be yourself, but find your inner strengths through your knowledge and skills. And if you want to get something else, something new, you always can learn. Like
It's glorious. Absolutely.
it's
Absolutely.
like when somebody asked me what you cannot do, I said, I cannot jump from parachute yet, but I can learn how to jump with a
That's
parachute.
right. That's right. And I think what's also glorious, and this is part of positive psychology, and this is going to take me to my third point. The first was you asked what's so different about this generation. One, they are critical thinkers, and two,
Mhm.
they are desperately looking and seeking in an authentic way. And three, if they go with it, they will tell everybody about it. They're very receptive to it. And if you want to jump out of an airplane, jump out of an airplane. If you're scared to jump out of an airplane, dig into some of the data and learn some of the best ways to regulate your emotions. People have done it. Change them. If that's really your dream, it may take a while for you to get there, but
Yes.
you can do it. Truly, you can do whatever you can dream.
And usually, like of this young generation, and and their parents, like older generation, they live by this old program that you have to like study hard, work hard to
Right.
achieve something. But at the same time, we should understand that all the schools, all these universities, colleges, they give us only primary knowledge and skill, like the most important, let's say, but they never look at us like something unique or different. We offer them just student of one
That's right. I hear
system.
that all the time. I'm a number.
I'm a number, yeah, exactly. And that's why to become not just a number, to become a personality, then you have to learn yourself, and then you
Yes.
learn
Yes.
learn what you would like to do, or and you can change the profession many times. You can change whatever you want. That's the point, that never minimize yourself and your potential. And that's why I'm saying, if people ask me what I cannot do, I said, I can do everything if I want to learn.
That
That's
is so true.
I can learn how to drive a submarine or whatever. I can learn how. I always can learn. I'm not gonna be a perfect in everything, but this is potential. If other person can do, you can do as well.
That's
But
right. That's
but
right. And
but
if you're
again,
okay with the beginner mind, if you're okay with looking foolish from time to time or for a season, you're unstoppable.
and I think that's why we have more psychologists in universities at the moment, colleges, working with students, like coaching them to find a way in education to improve the learning, that they can actually take something from school, not just like some knowledge and then forget it because they don't use it.
Right. Right.
But this,
And
yeah, yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so much fun to work with this positive psychology material, because one comment that these students make, because they study so hard, that many of our universities are very demanding.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they're not top tier, there's this psychology of perfectionism that can really erode an individual's mental health, that it isn't okay to just be good enough to
Yeah.
get the degree. In order to do that, which is survival for some people, they believe, they have to be perfect. And so
Mm-hmm.
that means study all the time, which is so unhealthy.
Unhealthy. Perfectionism, it's really unhealthy condition. And I
Yes,
remember myself when I was very young, I wanted to improve myself. I
that's
wanted to be
right. Me too.
better until I came to the very pleasant uh, acknowledgement that I just want to be myself, who I am, and who, it's just so simple, right? It sounds simple, but I don't need to be perfect for someone or for myself. I am who I am. That's just like, it's the same like when people talk that you need to give 100% of yourself. What do you know about 100%, 50%? Name me. What is 50%? What is 30%? It's like you cannot be pregnant a little bit and a little bit not pregnant. If you're
I
pregnant,
mean, think about it, that's sort of objectifying. Like
yes,
you're a quantity.
yeah. So if you're pregnant, you're pregnant. So you're giving as much as you can, but nobody knows what is 50%, what is
That's right.
20%. Or I don't like another expression. So I feel myself at 25. I said, oh yeah, I remember my 25, a student full of like, tests, exams, and two children. I would have excuse me. I mean, I felt good at the time because it was happy mother, happy wife. But doesn't matter. We change in every time, every period of our life. So feel yourself comfortable, happy, but not like 25, 35, whatever.
Mhm.
Just be yourself. And this is the learning how to be yourself. It's probably the most difficult because we got from the students like life that we have to always work, improve.
That's right. That's right. But doesn't it take courage to just be yourself?
Yeah, it actually takes courage, exactly. And that's why I was telling the stories that I was taking the test about the strengths character, like character strengths character, yeah,
Was it the
from
Clifton
university.
or the values in action, the VIA?
VA, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And uh, I knew my strengths, but when it came, like, to my eyes, that my biggest strengths, like leadership, okay, I know about this, but I was looking at this negatively because I had so much criticism that not the woman shouldn't be a leader. The woman should, and also to
Mm.
be a leader, it's always like,
Mhm.
to be a very nasty boss. I never was like that. I was actually, and I am good boss, but I skip this all strengths, but one of them was social intelligence strengths, which
Mhm.
is I like people or whatever, and they give another chance, and then forgiveness another strengths. So all is combining to loving people, right?
Mhm.
And I had from people all the time, it's not good to be so like so kind, forgive, give another chance to people who offended you, etc., etc. So it took me courage finally at 58 to accept that this is my not strength, not weakness. This is
That's
who I
right.
am.
That's
Can you
right.
imagine that? Because I always like, no, it's like some kind of weakness. It's not a
Mhm.
weakness, it's my strength. How many people can do like forgive? How many people can believe in people? It doesn't matter like if suffer or not. No, I'm not suffering. It's like, I am now who I am, which is really good. And I don't feel sorry that I didn't know about that many years ago because I lose nothing. But at the same time, I think we need to work more in this direction with young generation, like with
Oh, that's
students,
interesting, Elena. Could you tell me what you mean?
because first of all, the character strengths can be changed through the time. We know it,
Right.
but not
Right.
completely. Not completely. It's like probably your prototype in some way, like your core. You can change a little, but not too much. We know it from science, right? We
Mhm.
can change plus like minus, but not completely destroy our core. And I was thinking that if we work with a student, for example, and looking for with not just student, but I mean with younger generation, looking for the core, and if they feel some kind of weakness, they think, "Oh, I thought it's like not my strengths," or like the same would happen to me, right? And
Mhm.
maybe these people, if they got, for example, leadership strengths, so you're a good leader. It means it's inside of you. Start working in
Right.
this direction, and some people feel shy, or some people
That's
say,
right.
no, maybe I'll be a bad boss, maybe it shouldn't be like that. And it's the same like any type of strengths. If we have this core, like we say five most important, but could be even
Mhm.
more additionally. At the same time, if there is weakness, like let's say this strength didn't come out as a strong one, but the
Mhm.
person said, I want, for example, love better. I want to understand the meaning of love. This I
Mhm.
thought it's my strength, but now I see it's not my strength. So what I can do, well, you can work on this part, you can learn more. And also not necessary to work on this specific like weaknesses. It's not
Isn't that
weaknesses.
exciting that we have that kind of data?
Yeah, and
And that information that we are empowered in a way that I don't believe any previous generation's ever been empowered.
yes, I gave it like to check the test, not because I didn't believe, but I was telling about the test to my friends and some colleagues. So I said to some people, like, if you want to try, you can learn about
Right.
yourself more, and don't be surprised. And all of them were surprised, but actually were very happy because they knew about this, but they were the perception was more
Absolutely.
neutral or
Absolutely.
negative, you
And
know.
I have
And
students, I teach a unit on that via strengths in one of my classes, and they go through it and then they discuss it together. And then I have a nonprofit that I'm beginning, and the employees take it just so that we're all on the same wavelength about this is how we're approaching this. And then they go through and they do an analysis similar to what you were talking about with your doctors in training, that you want to look at what you have as your personal strength. If you're a good writer, if you're a good communicator, if you know whatever it is that makes you strong, bring that to your practice.
yeah,
And so similarly with this nonprofit, with a few people who are involved with it, to make sure that they've done some kind of analysis, a resource inventory of themselves.
yeah,
Includes
yeah,
the people they know, the experiences they've had, their personal strengths. So to take that via concept of let's work from this research validated idea that we're going to get further in life, building on our strengths, than trying to change everything about us that's really vexing, because we all have that.
yeah,
Look at yourself. What are those strengths? And for some of them, it can be transformational because they're not like
transformation.
everybody else. And they, at that age, especially, have spent so much energy engaging in these toxic comparisons.
Yeah, because yeah, exactly, toxic comparisons, because they hear different stories from other people, and they,
Mhm.
oh, probably it's not my strength, but my weakness, like
That's
I
right.
saw.
I mean, things they
Yeah.
can't help. You know, I was born to a single mom, and I mean, these are real stories. And I lost my dad when I was 12, and he might be dead and he might not. And that's with me. And so what do I do to try and fit in with these people who seem to have been raised on a television show? And so that takes a lot of, and this goes back to the psychology part of educational psychology. It really is everything that a person brings into their effort to pursue knowledge. And since both their experience as a human and what they're trying to learn is processed through their brain,
It's true.
it's so important to support the whole person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's what
Yeah.
we try to do through coaching and courses that teach them how to be a strong person and to value themselves. And that's the other side of that, that the people who come from backgrounds, and we all have a story, to really just give them the space to reflect on their story through the lens that their story has value.
Yeah. And I would like to say that if there are some young people who listening or watching this podcast, and we're dealing now with evidence-based psychology. It's like
That's right.
science. It's not just like blah blah blah.
That's
It's
right. This
not
is not a
somebody's.
meme.
It's not theories and
That's right.
some kind of suggestions.
That's
It's
right.
uh, it's based evidence facts. That's why we use it. That's why some tests are working, some not. But we know what's working, and
That's right.
that's why we can use in our practice and find about ourselves more. And we would be surprised, like I was surprised, even I knew what my strengths, but I never look at the strengths. I look at the
Right. Right.
weaknesses, you know. So that's very important to trust and believe. And as I said in the beginning, modern students are more lucky because they have psychologists even in colleges and universities, so they can go through coaching like Wendy's coaching and
Mm-hmm.
any other specialists in this field. We never had this.
None of
That's why,
it. It
yeah,
was
that's
like sink or swim. And that attitude you were talking about earlier, where any vulnerability was to be um, repressed and fixed
yeah,
as soon
big,
as possible. And
yeah,
the last thing, and this is, you know, a lot of this is cultural, we realize, but it's still in our culture to a certain extent. I'm still working with young people to work through it. They are, and I'm so excited about this, healthier than I was at that age, because they are aware. Many of them have gone through and accessed psychiatry and psychology, and it's normal. It's not as stigmatized. Hallelujah. But back in the day, it really was. You do not admit that you have a weakness, and don't talk about it if you do.
Yeah, that's true.
It's
Don't
so
talk.
toxic.
Yeah.
How do
And-
we learn?
And it's not bad to have some weaknesses, even if like
Yeah.
it's more important to concentrate on the strength, because this is the
Yes.
core. This is what
Yes.
moves you forward, moves you, like, you know, it makes you unique. And
100%. An
yeah.
author that I was reading this morning named Ann Voskamp, and it's spiritual, but it's not to everybody's taste. But she said something about joy that I feel the positive psychology plays out. And she said that joy is not the negation of all other emotions. And so what I'm hearing there are the people who come into my courses and these discussions with the fear that somebody's going to throw out toxic positivity at them, or just force them to pull themselves up by the bootstraps and put on a happy face. But joy is not the negation of all other emotions. It is transcendent.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful words. Yeah. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you so much. I hope I
It's a
didn't take you
beautiful
too long
conversation.
over your...
I enjoyed very much, and I hope all our viewers and listeners would enjoy too. And thank you for coming to this podcast.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I really enjoyed it. So
And
I invite you to ours, which is getting underway this summer, because I would love to continue the conversation and learn more about your strengths and where you are, so that you can help our young people.
actually, you wouldn't believe, but when like two of my books already published in Ukraine, even during the war, but it's about women's health. So, and then textbooks on pediatrics, I took a lot of like part of gynecology. But when I was thinking, what is the next book? And I was coming back and back to request of like young doctors, young people who knows me, and they were asking me to write something about my experience, and I was not ready to write about this, not because I don't have experience. I have experience, but again, how am I going to present it? How are we going to present it? How are we going to write it? Right? Like I need to see there's the book, some kind of, at least there's the skeleton of the book, and then I start working. And suddenly after this test, I said, I have to write something positive about our strengths. So I would take all strengths that are like, you know, listed in this test, and I will go and tell how I got, what I think, what I had experienced about this and that. And I'll thank you to people who, because I met a lot of good people in my life, and they played very good role. That's why I am who I am, thanks to people too. And that's why I'm gonna not just like, you know, talk about this important strengths, but in a way of my experience, but also about thanking gratitude, and I'm gonna thank to people who made me. And that's now I see clearly. So I just need to find a time and start it. When I started,
I'm here for it. I'm here for it. And I worked with an undergraduate for the last year and a half whose family's Bosnian, and she did a research study, a very small one, but she was applying positive psychology to first generation children of refugees. And she essentially, the psychology of the fresh start and breaking cycles that were created by trauma, but now they're a new generation. And they're very receptive young people. And she came up with that all on her own because of her own background, of course, and she went with it. So I would love to hear more about your experience.
Yeah, Ukraine is going through the difficult time at the moment. And I was thinking, all these young people, the future of Ukrainian population, Ukrainian like generation, they don't need my stories, how I struggle, how it was. So even if I went through some drama, whatever, be born under Soviet Union, going through their problems, communist, whatever rules, but I want them to feel like, I want them to smile when they read about this. I want them to laugh. I want to
And you
actually,
know, Olena, they want to smile too.
yeah, I want this negative experience bring in a
That's right.
funny way at the same time, like, so that this is nothing bad that happened. It's actually make me more stronger, make me
That's right.
who I am. It gives me, like, power to live and create, because
Yes,
if I survived, if I went through this, it means I'm very strong. So that's what
that's
I'm
right.
gonna do.
That's right.
And probably even tonight, I'm gonna start working on the book thanks to our conversation,
Oh, that's
because
awesome.
I
That's
need actually
awesome.
to start, but I
Well,
didn't have,
post-traumatic growth is a thing.
yeah.
And so really being able to harness that very human, miraculous power to no matter what. And this is not to minimize or trivialize suffering because it's horrendous.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, there is always hope.
Always hope, and actually it's my also strengths: hope, optimism,
That's right.
and wise wisdom, perspective wisdom. Yeah,
That's right.
or
But that's all positive
perspective
psychology.
wisdom. Sorry.
Yes, yes. And this data, and I love that you emphasize this is scientifically vetted data.
It's yes.
It is
That's why I was
not
thinking. I don't
simply
need to.
folklore, but it's
Yeah,
what's so powerful because it shows how to get there step by step.
step by step. Yeah,
Because we need
exactly.
guidance sometimes.
And
Life is
then
hard.
that's I'm gonna write not about medicine, because I wrote a lot about medicine. Now it's time on psychology, but again, I have experience, I have knowledge. That's why I took courses on psychology, understand better the structure, everything. And also, I'm a researcher. I'm looking for evidence, like
That's right. That's
evidence-based data. And that's why I know what I can present and what I can give to people and say, this is not blah, blah. This is not just my own, some
that's
kind of
right.
imagination. This is what we're dealing.
Well, that's
So,
what I respect too. I have that in common with them.
yeah.
I want something that I can build on and won't just be trendy.
Yeah. So if I tell you my story, it will be a very long
You'll
story.
hear from me. You will.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so
Okay.
much for your time. I really
Thank you
appreciate you
very
again
much. Me too.
initiating this. You've been
Thank you.
delightful. Till next time.
Till next time, for sure. Okay. Bye-bye.